In our headlines on this Friday, November 1st, here on the Korean Peninsula. Diplomatic and defense authorities from Seoul and Washington engage in their 2+2 dialogue on Thursday against the backdrop of heightened security tensions following an ICBM test by North Korea and its deployment of troops to Russia. And North Korea confirms its most recent launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile into the EC early Thursday morning that was reportedly in the air for 86 minutes, which is said to be longer than its earlier record by 13 minutes. Meanwhile, here in South Korea, exports expand in October by 4.6% on-year, marking the 13th consecutive month of on-year expansions, bolstered by chips and cars. Top diplomatic and defense officials from South Korea and the U.S. sat down in Washington, D.C. for their 2+2 dialogue on Thursday. And speaking at the press conference after those talks, the four officials collectively condemned North Korea's acts of aggression in support of Russian warfare. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pei Eun-ji has details.
A total of about 10,000 North Korean soldiers are in Russia, and 8,000 of them appear to be at Ukraine's border. That's according to the U.S. Secretary of State as he made remarks alongside his South Korean counterpart during a press conference following 2+2 talks between foreign and defense chiefs from Seoul and Washington.
We now assess that there are some 10,000 North Korean soldiers in total in Russia. And the most recent information indicates that as many as 8,000 of those North Korean forces have been deployed to the Kursk region. We've not yet seen these troops deploy into combat against Ukrainian forces, but we would expect that to happen in the coming days.
Blinken added that Russia has been training North Korean soldiers in artillery and unmanned aerial vehicles, indicating that they fully intend to use these forces in frontline operations. He also warned that should these troops engage in combat or combat support operations against Ukraine, they would become legitimate military targets. In a joint statement following the talks, the two sides vowed to actively pursue necessary measures with the international community to deter further unlawful, reckless, and destabilizing behavior from Pyongyang and Moscow.
We condemned North Korea's dispatch of troops in the strongest language possible and called for an immediate stop to these actions and all other illegal military cooperation.
Cho added that the two sides also reaffirmed the goal of complete denuclearization of North Korea and that they strongly condemned the regime's long-range ballistic missile launch carried out the day before. Thursday's talks come after the Ukrainian ambassador to the United Nations said North Korean soldiers wearing Russian uniforms and carrying Russian equipment are heading toward Ukraine, and that as many as 4,500 of them are expected to be at Russia's border with Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has been calling for support from allies and partners, said what the country needs most from South Korea is an air defense system. In an interview with South Korean broadcaster KBS, he said Ukraine will send a request to South Korea, asking for weapons support, once it's officially confirmed that the North Korean troops have come to fight against Ukrainian citizens. Amid rising concerns during a UN Security Council meeting in New York on Thursday, the deputy U.S. ambassador to the United Nations directly confronted Russia.
And I have a very respectful question for my Russian colleague. Does Russia still maintain that there are no DPRK troops in Russia? That's my only question and my final point.
But the Russian representative at the meeting refused to comment, and the session was adjourned. Pei Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korea has confirmed its test launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile into the EC, and South Korea's Unification Ministry has touched upon the timing of this latest provocation. Our Kim Jong-sil reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un personally oversaw Thursday's Hwasong-19 ICBM launch, hailing it as a defining success. The regime state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Friday. Kim stated that the missile success demonstrates North Korea's absolute and irreversible nuclear capabilities, describing the Hwasong-19 as the final and ultimate version, reportedly an upgrade from the Hwasong-18. Seoul's Ministry of Unification outlined potential reasons behind Pyongyang's missile provocations.
This launch follows the September 13th unveiling of a uranium enrichment facility and the first reveal of a strategic missile base on October 23rd. It may aim to showcase North Korea's nuclear capabilities to pressure the U.S., divert attention from troop deployments to Russia, secure achievements for the year-end party meeting, and address military technology needs.
The foreign ministers of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan condemned the launch in a joint statement. South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and the Japanese Foreign Minister Iwaya Takashi condemned the launch, saying it poses a severe threat to regional peace. The three ministers urged North Korea to immediately cease its provocative and destabilizing actions, highlighting the missile test as a violation of multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also released a statement on Thursday local time, strongly condemning the launch. He urged for de-escalation and renewed dialogue, stressing that diplomacy is the only path to lasting peace and the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Reuters reported that the United Nations Security Council is expected to address the launch following a request by several nations, including South Korea, the U.S., France, and the UK. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
In other news, the Czech antitrust watchdog has dismissed appeals by France's EDF and the US's Westinghouse against the selection of Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power as the preferred bidder for a nuclear power project in the Central European country. Our Ian Jin has more.
The Czech Office for the Protection of Competition, the UOHS, rejected appeals by nuclear technology firms Westinghouse from the US and France's EDF against the Czech Republic choosing South Korea's Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power as their preferred bidder to build 2 nuclear power plants in Dukovany. The UOHS said in its statement on Wednesday that proceedings on the proposals from the U.S. and French companies were mostly terminated, while other parts of their proposals were rejected. It said that Westinghouse's objection to the contracting authority's use of a security exception was dismissed, as it was filed after the March 2022 deadline, adding that the company should have filed objections immediately after learning of the procedure more than 2 years ago. The Czech state-run energy group CEZ chose the Korean consortium, led by Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power, as their preferred bidder in July. And as the two parties were negotiating contract terms, in August, Westinghouse claimed that the KHNP's reactors were made based on its original technology, while EDF challenged the principles of fair trade and transparency of the bidding process. The proceedings started in September. CEZ said the appeals would not delay the timeframe of the project, which starts with concluding a contract with KHNP by March 2025. However, the UOHS decisions are not final yet, as Westinghouse and EDF could file an appeal. A temporary block has been put on the conclusion of the KHNP contract, which restricts CEZ from signing the deal with KHNP until a final decision is made. According to the plan for the project, which is expected to be the Czech Republic's largest ever energy procurement deal, the completion of the first reactor is expected to be in 2036. 이은진, Arirang News.
Here in Korea, exports rose 4.6% on year in October, fueled yet again by shipments of chips and cars. Our Cho Seong has the latest trade numbers.
South Korea's exports continue to grow on the back of booming semiconductor and auto shipments. Data released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Friday showed that the country's exports in October came to a total of $57.52 billion. This is a 4.6% rise from the same month the year before and marks the 13th month of consecutive year-on-year growth in exports. Exports of semiconductors and automobiles achieved record highs for the month of October. The government forecasts exports to keep growing through November and December this year.
Semiconductor exports will stay strong until the end of the year. Looking ahead to next year, international issues like the Ukraine war, the Middle East conflicts and the US presidential election create uncertainties. The government will monitor these closely.
Semiconductors, South Korea's largest export item, maintained their upward trend for the 12th consecutive month. October semiconductor exports reached over $12.5 billion, a more than 40% increase compared to the same period last year. The total export value of computer products, including solid-state drives, came to around $1 billion, marking 10 consecutive months of growth. Automobile exports also set a new record for the month of October, increasing 5.5% year-on-year to over $6 billion. Experts said that both semiconductors and cars have generally seen price increases rather than increases in quantity.
For semiconductors, demand has stabilized from last year, and across its sectors, prices have generally increased rather than quantity. For automobiles, the positive results are also due to higher prices, not because of an increase in the number of units sold.
Exports to China, South Korea's largest trading partner, surged by nearly 11% to $12.2 billion, driven by strong performances in semiconductors and petrochemicals, recording the highest figures since September 2022. Exports to the United States also hit a record high for the month of October, increasing by more than 3% year-on-year to $10.4 billion. South Korea's imports show a slight increase in October, but the country maintained its trade surplus for the 17th straight month. Jeju, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., it appears that the state of Pennsylvania remains the top prize among the battleground zones as the latest polls continue to point to a very close presidential race. Our Ising-jae has the latest.
With the U.S. presidential election now just days away, Democratic candidate Kamala Harris and Republican candidate Donald Trump are neck and neck in key battleground states as well as across the country. While most opinion polls show Harris holding on to a slight lead nationally, the key battleground states that will determine the actual election result are continuing to see a close race, with different polls showing different leaders. In a nationwide poll conducted by The Economist and YouGov on 1,466 registered voters across the U.S. from October 26 to the 29th, Harris received 47% support, while Trump received 46%. When limiting the poll to voters who intend to vote, the vice president received 49%, while the former president received 46%. In a survey conducted by UMass Lowell and YouGov from October 16th to the 23rd on 800 registered voters in Pennsylvania, 48% said they intended to vote for Harris, while 47% said they would vote for Trump. However, a poll conducted by Emerson College on 860 likely voters from the state, Trump leads Harris by 49% to 48%. A Bloomberg News survey on Pennsylvania shows Harris having a slight lead over Trump. With different polls showing different leaders for the state of Pennsylvania, it's too close to call, with the state expected to be the biggest battleground state for the two candidates. Since 1976, the candidates that took Pennsylvania won the presidential election 10 out of 12 times, with George W. Bush's wins in 2000 and 2004 being the only exceptions. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
Author Han Gang's father linked his daughter's winning of the Nobel Prize for Literature this year to the power of translation. That being said, in this next report, our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin explores this process of transcending language barriers that some call art and others science.
When Professor Yoon Sun-mi heard about Han Gang's Nobel Prize win, one thought stood out.
It's sparking strong curiosity among international publishers of Korean literature. This could lead to a greater demand for translators.
Professor Yoon, who grew up in Argentina, is one of Korea's first literary translators and has nearly 30 years of experience. In 2012, she introduced Han Gang's The Vegetarian to Spanish-speaking readers, marking the book's first Western language translation. For her, translation is more than just switching words to another language.
You're conveying hidden meanings, intentions, and symbolic nuances. You have to understand the author's purpose, the character's psychology, and how readers will interpret it. It's like conducting an orchestra, balancing all these elements for a translation that's faithful.
Since 2010, Professor Yoon has been nurturing future translators as an instructor at the Literature Translation Institute of Korea's Translation Academy.
South Korea is unique in having a government-backed institution for training literary translators. A recent amendment to the Literature Promotion Act even proposes graduate programs in literary translation, showing a growing recognition of the need for experts to introduce Korean literature worldwide.
With courses in 7 languages, the Academy enrolls around 150 students, 90% of whom are international, and covers more than just books. Students also translate webtoons and films.
Since we are having to be in contact with Korean literature, we get to meet some writers, and we have an amazing library here. We can read a lot of books. So
I think I like to translate novels in a way that that brings them closer to the Spanish readers.
Despite these opportunities, translating is still a challenging path.
Translation grants haven't increased since I started 30 years ago, so it's tough to make this a full-time career. I tell my students to consider translation as a side job. Breaking in is also hard. The Daesan Foundation is the only place new translators can apply for work, as most publishers prefer established names.
Thus, it's time to come up with some solutions.
We need more platforms where translators and publishers, both local and international, can connect. Creating opportunities for new translators through these platforms, or requiring the use of rookie translators for projects, even small ones, would give them practical experience to build a full-time career.
A powerful translation gives literature a new dimension. With efforts like these, Korean literature could reach readers far and wide. 송유진, Arirang News.
Up next, we share with you a stunning traditional firework display in the southern part of Korea that dates back to the Joseon dynasty, one that organizers believe needs to be on your bucket list. My colleague An Sung-jin had a glimpse.
If there are galaxies, a swarm of stars in the sky, then on the ground, there's Nakhwanori, where beams of fire shine in the dark. Every year, Haman County in the south of Gyeongsang-namdo province holds a performance that is often called something you must see before you die. This is Nakhwanori. Nakhwa means falling flowers, while Nori means game. The fireworks are made by wrapping oak charcoal powder in hanji, or Korean traditional mulberry paper. The special program by the Korea Tourism Organization even allows people to write their own wishes on the paper. The process of creating these paper balls has been patented, and the fireworks are designated as the province's intangible cultural heritage.
Fireworks are popular across Asia, but they all use gunpowder, which harms nature. Unlike those, our Nakhwanori not only emphasize historical and traditional values, but it's also made out of natural Korean ingredients which cause no harm.
After these paper balls are hung up, they are set on fire, falling into the small pond of Bujinjeong Pavilion. As the burning paper catches the wind, countless flames fall on the pond in all directions, resembling flower petals falling or fireworks on the water.
After watching Korean dramas, I've always wanted to visit. Seeing it for myself, it's so fantastic, and I'm very touched. It's worth coming all the way from Japan to see this.
Nakhwanori started during the Joseon dynasty to wish for prosperity. Though it was halted during the period of Japanese colonial rule, it was restored in 1985 and continues till today. The festival was originally held in May in accordance with Buddha's birthday. However, with thousands of both Korean and international visitors wanting to see this unique sight, the Korea Tourism Organization pledged to host the fireworks more often.
Most of the visitors coming to Korea are clustered in Seoul and nearby areas. However, there are a lot of places like Haman that have regional specific content, which we plan to further develop with local governments and residents.
The organization is seeking to create more programs with the Nakhwanori each month starting next year. An Sung-jin, Arirang News, Haman.
Meanwhile, Netflix has a new trailer for the second season of its original series Squid Game, which will hit screens on December 26th. The trailer itself, released that is on this Friday, hints at new games and unexpected twists, as well as the return of actor Kong Yoo with what appears to be a bigger role. The highly anticipated Season 2 will maintain its spotlight on the animosity between Lee Jung-jae and Lee Byung-hun, with the former returning to the deadly game, seeking revenge. Fans can expect more shocking revelations as the participants fight for survival yet again.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. The death toll has risen to at least 158 after torrential rain early this week caused the worst flooding disaster seen in Spain in decades. Search and rescue operations are continuing in eastern Spain, with an unconfirmed number of people still missing. That is adding to fears that the death toll will increase, with Spain's defense minister saying we are not optimistic. Spain's Valencia region saw more than a year's worth of rainfall in just 8 hours on Tuesday, which the country's weather agency called extraordinary. Authorities say more rain is expected to hit the region on Friday, while Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez warned people to seek shelter. According to the BBC, Valencia residents have called the situation a nightmare, while saying that everybody in the region knows someone who has died. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister visited the Emergency Command Center some 16 kilometers away from Valencia City on Thursday, where he said that the Spanish government will commit all the resources to find the missing people for as long as necessary. The floods are the deadliest seen in Europe since 2021. Moving over to Turkey, where hundreds gathered in one of Istanbul's squares on Thursday to protest against the arrest and removal from office of a district mayor. The mayor of Istanbul's Esenyurt district, Ahmet Ezer, from Turkey's main opposition Republican People's Party, was arrested on Wednesday for alleged links to a banned Kurdish militant group, the Kurdistan Workers' Party. 64-year-old Ezer, a university professor who was elected in March, saw his home raided by anti-terrorism police early on Wednesday morning on suspicion of holding membership in the outlawed PKK. His position was replaced by Istanbul's deputy governor on Thursday. The Republican People's Party's leader, Özgür Özel, and other politicians described the move a coup, while Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu called Özer's arrest an attempt to undermine law and democracy. Millions of Indians began celebrating Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights, on Thursday, with fireworks and oil lamps illuminating cities. Diwali, which comes from the Sanskrit word Deepavali, meaning row of lights, is one of India's most widely celebrated holidays of the year, symbolizing the victory of light over darkness, marked by the return of Lord Ram, a major deity in Hinduism. Diwali is also a national holiday across India and is typically celebrated with family and friends, exchanging gifts and saying prayers, while many homes light candles or earthen oil lamps as part of the celebrations. Hello Kitty turns 50 today, November 1st. One of Japanese entertainment company Sanrio's most popular characters is marking the milestone with a new exhibition in Tokyo's National Museum titled As I Change, So Does She. Hello Kitty cut the ribbon herself to open the exhibition on Wednesday, which opens on the character's birthday. The As I Change, So Does She exhibition showcases Hello Kitty collectibles throughout history, from stationery to shoes, and collaborations with other major brands. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
The daily rainfall on Jeju Island today was 102.2 millimeters, the highest ever recorded in November since 1923 when records began. Currently, heavy rain and strong wind warnings are issued for the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. With lots of clouds across the country, there will be up to 300 millimeters of heavy rain in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island by tomorrow morning. Heavy rain of up to 100 millimeters is also expected on the south coast areas of Gyeongsang-namdo Province, Busan, and Jeollanam-do Province. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at 13 degrees Celsius, Gwangju and Daegu 15 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 23 in Seoul and Gwangju, Chuncheon and Gyeongju 20 degrees. Next week, morning temperatures will drop below 5 degrees in inland areas such as Seoul. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, on that note, we end our newscast for this hour. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.